Hello, Internet, and welcome to another community conversation here on the BlenderNest Discord server. Today, we are joined by Joey Carlino. Joey is an artist, animator, and educator, kindly sharing his Blender knowledge in the form of YouTube tutorials. When he isn't working on entrancing looping animations or freelance and personal projects, he's talking about music and making pizza at the local bakery. I want to set the tone and the pace for these community conversations by starting with the same question every time. If you joined us for the last one, you'll have heard me ask, what did you have for breakfast? So, Joey, what did you have for breakfast?
So I pretty much have the same breakfast every day. And it's some Greek yogurt with granola and strawberries and walnuts. Sometimes I switch it up with different fruit or nuts, but that's pretty much it.
That sounds like a really healthy and nutritious breakfast.
Yeah, like a year.
Go ahead.
Like a year back or two, I switched from milk to yogurt for breakfast. So been doing that with my cereal instead.
What inspired the switch?
I'm not sure actually. I think I had a fridge that was dying for a second before I got a new one, and the milk kept going bad, and I think maybe it was just negative association or something. That and Greek yogurt is just, I like it.
It is real good. So I want to touch a little bit on your trajectory before, becoming an artist animator, before starting on YouTube tutorials. I understand that you worked on a project called Robospunk. Am I saying that correctly? Or is it Robopunk?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, Robospunk.
Robospunk.
Yeah, so that's just like a username, like a screen name that I've had since like high school, something like that. And a few years back, maybe like 2015 or something, I started a little webcomic, and it was kind of in the form of like, it started off as like a daily webcomic where, in the same way that people do daily renders you see on Instagram, stuff like that, where the goal was to just create a finished comic and post it by the end of the day. And so I did that for a few months before switching to, I think, like a twice weekly schedule. And I kept up with that for about 2 years.
That's impressive. Keeping up with daily challenges or daily goals is actually a lot harder than a lot of people think. So kudos for that.
It's definitely a challenge. And, I'm not crazy about a lot of the comics that I made. I think a lot of them weren't the best quality. They definitely increased in quality as time went on in terms of just like my artwork and the time that I put into them. But the main idea behind it was to practice finishing projects and actually, just seeing projects through, which until that point was a thing that I didn't do very often. I would just doodle and sketch a lot. So I think it definitely helped me get on track to finishing projects.
Definitely seems that way. And I see on the site as well, and doing some research, that you paused Robospunk to seek out other projects. Could you tell us a bit about what inspired that and what you ended up doing instead?
Yeah, so my trajectory has been kind of all over the place in the past few years. And in the past 2 years, that's, basically around 2 years ago is when I started learning Blender. And I've been sticking with it since. But before that, I knew I wanted to do something art or technology related. And so I hopped around quite a bit between different things, trying them out to try to figure out what I wanted to do. So back in 2010, when I graduated high school, I went to art school for a year, and I ended up dropping out because of financial issues. But even after that, I knew I still wanted to focus on art, so I was doing that in my off time. And so while I was making webcomics, I wanted to start making merch for myself. So I bought a button machine, like pin back buttons. Some people call them badges or pins. And I started making those for myself, but I wanted to make my money back from buying the machine, so I started actually making those for other people also, and kind of opened like a a small local pin business where I was selling them to other local comic artists and some people online. So that was fun. And I did that for a few years. And I recently sold my machine because I kind of slowed down and stopped taking orders. Yeah, it's kind of strange. Every time I start a project, I, like how I started webcomics, I then started making things for webcomic artists and comic artists. And then when I wanted to, I started working on web development for about a year because I thought maybe I would like making websites. And part of that was that I just wanted a website for my comics and a website for my button stuff. So I learned how to do that. And then I wanted to make websites for people. So yeah, and then I was thinking maybe I would try to make tools for web designers. So every step of the way, I always feel like I'm trying to give back to the community in some way or make things for the community that I'm working in. That seems to be a reoccurring theme. And so that carries into the present with Blender related stuff where as I learn Blender, I want to share what I'm learning with other people. And yeah.
And thank you for doing that. I'll post or it's already been posted, the link to your YouTube in the chat. Right. Let's drop this here so people can have the same visuals I'm having. But that trajectory is reflected in your posts, and then the consistency as well of someone who's worked on a webcomic for as long as you had, as well as you mentioned, web development. I had to look at your code pen as well. And I get the sense that even though these are things that to some degree you didn't keep up with in light of finding other things that were a little bit more interesting, they all informed and built on top of each other to get you to where you are today, as you said. And that's, I think, also reflected in your thumbnails too. And so if you could speak a little bit about your style, because I think it's very cohesive just by looking at your videos and your thumbnails. And it's very unique as well. So what inspired that?
Yeah, so so I think it's definitely a good thing to talk about. Just in that a lot of people will like graduate high school and immediately move on to college and try to move forward with their life in a very like direct and straight line, and they have to decide a thing and go for it and like no turning back. And I think even though I've tried a lot of things and kind of slowed down or stopped a lot of the things that I've tried, they have definitely made I'm happy that I did those things. I feel like a lot of the paths that I took made what I'm doing now a lot easier. So like in high school, I signed up for like a video class, like a video editing class and shooting. So because of that, even though I didn't end up going into any kind of like video like industry or film, I do have a little editing knowledge, so that helped me there. And then I didn't have to pay somebody to set up my own site because I worked in web development for a short period of time. And all of these little nuggets of things that I tried along the way kind of added up and helped a lot. Whereas if I just was always on track to doing like 3D stuff, I would have a lot of gaps in my knowledge. And so I think that's one of the benefits of kind of being like a jack of all trades. It helps you, I don't know. It's like a one-stop shop kind of deal. So I think like my style, I guess, it's hard to look at my stuff and like pick out a style, but people definitely say that I do have a style. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that I have done a lot of traditional art. I like cartoons a lot, and so a lot of stuff I draw is kind of cartoony and maybe grotesque. and some of that translates into my 3D art, especially when I do character work. I usually start off with a sketch and try to make things very big, exaggerated shapes to keep things dynamic and less rigid. And I think that's probably my most stylized, recognizable work, probably.
Agreed. Yeah, it's really reflected, and that was one of the things that came to mind when looking at your work, watching the videos. Is that it's reminiscent to me of sketches that I do, because I sketch a lot as well, and I like that style a lot of really exaggerated features and characters, because like you said, I think it helps keep it interesting and keep it not looking rigid.
Right.
And I want to take a turn a little bit towards the way that this stacking of untraditional or unconventional pieces of knowledge that you've acquired throughout the years has helped you form a career for yourself as well as a name, right? This is, if you're looking at Joey's channel, you'll see the consistent work that's being put into not only sharing some of the work that's done, but also making tutorials. And I had an opportunity to watch the video that you worked on with torrential downpour, Old Familiar.
Right.
And that was a really cool project, and I'll link it here in the chat. But how did that collaboration start? And I'm sure it wasn't the first and won't be the last.
Right. So I like music a lot, especially metal music. I know it's not the most popular in this particular community. And I thought maybe that would be a good kind of I think a lot of 3D animators make music videos for electronic artists. And so I figured I could try to go for a different genre and have kind of a like corner the market in that way. So I went towards metal and other like rock oriented groups and just started sending out a bunch of emails to different artists that I knew, preferably smaller artists who would actually respond back and listen to me and be willing to have a conversation, or people who weren't on major labels. So they would be able to very easily give me like the green light to go, and I wouldn't have to deal with, getting like copyright claims and stuff like that. So,
and watching this video, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, continue.
I was going to say, in watching this video, so I watched the music video, and I also watched the breakdown, which was really fun to watch, of the members of Torrential Downpour talking and walking through the video with you. And in it, you mentioned that it was about 2 months of work, right, and a lot of hours. So what was the process like working with this band that you just reached out to? You send an email, and then they respond. So what was that like?
Yeah, so I sent out like a whole bunch of emails, and the reason I found them is actually from like a previous client that I worked with, who also lives in the New York, New Jersey area, and he knew them personally and told them about me and told me about them. So that's how I reached out to them, and they were already expecting my call basically. Yeah, so the process was actually really relaxed, and the vocalist just gave me basically like all the lyrics and told me about a dream he had, which was kind of funny, and just gave me some kind of like thematic elements to work off of. And I gave them kind of really rough ideas of what I was thinking of doing, and then just started and they were like, yeah, we like your stuff, just do what you want basically, which is really nice to hear. And another reason why I thought making things for other artists would be nice is because I think working with artists specifically, they understand, I mean most of them anyway, would understand how nice it is to have creative control. And so they basically just trusted me to make what I wanted to make. I just kept giving them little updates here and there and sending them clips whenever I had rough clips rendered out, asking for if they wanted any revisions and things like that. So it was a pretty relaxed process for the most part.
It certainly feels that way, watching the breakdown and the artist commentary as you all are watching the video piece by piece and they ask you some questions about your workflow, that it
Right.
was a very relaxed and very collaborative working experience. So I'm happy that you got to go through that. What advice, before we move on to a tiny personal question, what advice would you give to people who are listening or who will hear this back, in regards to creating that form of collaboration with people? What were some things that were green flags, to be the opposite of red flags?
Right.
Drop a little hint about my next question too, that let you know that this was going to be something that you would carry through with.
First of all, I think one of my personal philosophies when dealing with clients is to be honest and open and try not to avoid talking about things like price or, the way you work, and kind of be firm in your stance, but also kind and understanding. So I think that, sorry, what was the question again?
No worries. There was a couple questions in there, but the main question, or the first question, was what advice would you give to people in terms of crafting this like a very collaborative working experience?
Right.
Because I think
So
I think sometimes you can start a work a collaboration with somebody, and then a couple of emails or exchanges and realize that maybe it's not all that you thought it was going to be, or personalities clash. But it seems like this was really fun for everyone involved. And so what were some takeaways from that you thought, this is something to look out for in following projects, so I can be sure that I'm working with people who want to work with me?
Yeah, so like I was saying before, just being honest with people. I feel like if they are honest with you in return, that's a pretty good sign. And when you mention things like price, which you shouldn't avoid, if they're responsive and willing to talk about that, whether it's positive or negative, just being able to communicate with people, I think, is very important, especially without getting heated and just trying to keep things light. So that was definitely good with them, is they were willing to talk about everything. I think before getting started with a project, it's good to lay down guidelines and have people sign contracts if need be, which can be good for both you and the person you're working for, because then they know exactly what they're getting. So you can't short them, and they also can't ask you to do things that weren't in the contract, basically. Yeah, so I think things like that are pretty important for when you're starting freelancing.
Absolutely. I would echo all of that, especially in the being honest and upfront with each other and hearing out for whether the person is willing to meet you halfway, but also on the contract front is very important, because as you said, it allows you to make curtail scope creep, which is
exactly
huge.
And this project, for example, there was a little of that, but because it wasn't agreed upon beforehand, we talked about it further. So when I made the video initially, it was just the video and editing it all together. But after it was done, they came back to me to ask me to put lyrics and sync them to the music, and that, because we had talked about it beforehand, was already clear that they didn't ask for that from the beginning, so they did end up paying a little extra for that, and everything was, it was still an overall positive experience, I think, because of the open communication.
That's good to hear, and certainly something to keep in mind if you are just starting a freelance career, or a good reminder if you're already working in one. I wanted to double back a little bit to the hint that I dropped earlier about the red and green flags, because in watching that commentary video, you mentioned that you are slightly colorblind.
Yes.
Specifically in the red and green channels. And so
red and green flags. Yes.
So I'm curious to know how you think, now obviously having lived with this knowledge, how do you think that informs some of your work choices or creative choices, if any?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting one, because for quite a while I didn't know, because why would I guess. I think as an artist, especially a digital artist, it's actually not a huge problem for me, because in digital art specifically, when I am focusing on color, I am usually working off of like a color wheel. And so obviously, like what order the colors go in, and how colors can relate to each other if you know anything about color theory. And so being able to like just see a color wheel and know that like, oh, if it's between, red and blue, then like there's purple and pink and stuff in there. So there's not a lot of confusion when it comes to stuff like that. And I think having some like pretty basic understanding of color theory can go a long way. I think as far as how it changes my work is, as a traditional artist, I usually worked mostly in black and white, with occasionally throwing one more color in there. And you can see that in my comics a lot, which I kept simple to cut down on time, but most of them are just black, white, and pale green. And so that definitely was part of that. I don't like to add too many colors usually. I like to keep limited palettes. And I think that's all right to keep limited palettes. I think yeah, it's a lot easier to work with fewer colors for sure. And focusing on value, just light and dark values, is a skill that everybody should have if they're working as an artist. And a lot of the time I find is more important, but maybe that's just, I don't know, my bias also.
I think it makes sense. It definitely, again, shows in just the thumbnails alone. If you look at the work, then it's even more obvious. But in the thumbnails, you can see that cohesion, and part of that is working within the constraints of a limited color palette. I think that's something that everybody should practice with, even if it's just for one specific project. Try to restrict yourself to working within, with a subset of colors as opposed to all the colors,
right?
And see how it speaks through the piece and through the project to create and craft a more cohesive piece of work. So
right.
That definitely shows. I think like with the easy character modeling, apply scale, floating head, green. There's a lot of green and actually red, not surprisingly, in those. And so I think that, as you grow, even now, people might be able to just look at the thumbnail and go, oh, that's Joey's work. And that's always really, really fun, and also speaks to the caliber of the work and the reach.
Thank you.
Too. Of course. And so we've oh, go ahead.
Oh, I guess I was just going to mention something about if a lot of the time, even if I do use like all of the colors of the rainbow, having some kind of major color can help a lot too. Even if it's just a colored light in your scene, kind of washing everything like a certain, like say you have just like a larger cool light, just to try to push the scene toward one color can definitely help a lot too, for me specifically. And working with high contrast, I think I tend to do that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's worked out for a lot of people. Somebody who's joining us here on the stage has a very specific and recognizable color palette. I won't name names, but it rhymes with Herdis Colt. And I think that's a really intelligent decision to make, to stick to some colors and work with those and see how you can essentially create a brand with those. And if it doesn't work, you can always switch, but trying that out, I think you'll reap many benefits from that, and it shows. I think we've established that you are a jack of all trades, and I empathize with this. trying to dabble in many things, as you mentioned. And when I asked you what you're most excited about in our conversations, you said that you were hyped about getting back into rigging and character animation.
Right.
So what's the goal there, and what do you hope to do with that, stacking that knowledge into your tool belt?
Yeah, so I guess it's always something that I've kind of been excited about. Even pretty much since I was a little kid, I've been animating with like post-it notes and stuff like that. And I've always liked cartoons a lot too. And I've always, since I stopped making comics, I've always kind of wanted to go back, but figured that when I did, it would be kind of a different format. And so, yeah, I've basically just been working with Blender for a few years and getting more comfortable. And I think I'm finally getting to a point where if I was to work on a larger scale project having to do with characters and character animation and modeling, I would be in a much better position for that. And having a little experience writing, short, bad jokes and, things with punchlines and stuff like that. Um, I think I could kind of tie some things together to make little animated shorts. I don't have any huge plans, just a lot of nebulous, vague ideas, but it is something that I am working towards, especially if you look at my most recent thumbnails or tutorials, there is some character stuff in there, so that's kind of just pointing towards my trajectory, I guess.
Yeah, I think the logical step after this video I've posted in the chat is easy character rigging as
Yeah,
well. So I'd
exactly.
love to see this character dance.
Right. Yeah, so I actually did have to rig that character for the thumbnail, I'm sure. Yeah, because I didn't model it in that position. Right. So I did already rig it, but um, I want to try to learn rigging well enough to teach it to people in a way that's easy to understand. And I think that's I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I think that's a thing that I can be kind of good at is learning things from other people and then making it more digestible and like kind of breaking it down in a way that other people can understand better. It's a thing that I've had to do a lot in my life, not even related to work, relating to artwork, but just in my life in general. Because I have like a younger sister, and so I was always trying to like teach her stuff that I had learned, and I've had to train a lot of people at work in the kitchen. A lot of the time, people whose first language was not English. So sometimes with a language barrier, you have to kind of change your vocabulary to make sure that you're easy to understand and you're using words that actually make sense, and are words that they would actually know. And if you can't use words, sometimes using actions or pictures can really help too. Yeah, so.
And this really shows in your style as well. I watched Turn Anything into a Painting with shader nodes, and then the ones that I've pasted in the chat, as well as a couple of others. And one thing that was really evident from the beginning is that this is somebody who's put thought into how to deliver the message. I think that's really important for educators, especially.
Yeah, I agree.
And on the subject of educators, I would love to turn this over now to Sharan, Curtis, Yoshi. If you all have questions for Joey and want to chime in some form, I'd love to turn that over to you all.
It was great talking to you and listening to you, Joey. I was thinking, like, what would be your next videos on YouTube? Like, what would you make? Like, your preference.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm planning on one. I'm planning one now, where obviously I'm working on rigging, so I'm probably going to do a few rigging tutorials. I am planning on doing more character modeling tutorials where I do different types of characters, and kind
Yes.
of creating characters that have different features, different like focuses. So specifically, the one that I made before had no hair, had no ears or nose or anything like that. But I wanted to make somebody with cool shoes because I thought that would look good in a thumbnail.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one I do will probably have like a person with like a very prominent nose or eyebrows and ears and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I
that's nice.
think the the next video I'm doing is going to be about the map range node.
Oh,
Just
amazing.
kind of explaining it. I think I don't know why exactly, but that's one that seems to stump people. A
Yeah,
lot of people go for the color ramp node when they could use
yeah,
the map range node.
yeah. Just so you know, like, map range node, recently CG Cookie made one, like, try not to like overlap that so that,
Oh yeah, yeah, I'll
yeah,
check that out. I saw the
yeah,
thumbnail, but I didn't actually watch the whole thing.
yeah, exactly. It's fine. Not many people go through all the functions inside the
Right.
map range node. I wish you go through them once more.
Yeah, I think I'm still working on it and trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to explain certain things like clamping and stuff. So I think I have
Hmm.
that settled, but um, and part of it will probably be the different interpolation types, and also
Yeah.
if you want to use a map range node like a color ramp node,
Hmm.
how to do that and how to add multiple colors, because that is a
Yeah.
question that I see a lot also.
Yeah. I had the same question a long time ago. It took me some time to figure that out, but yeah, please do make a video on that one. Will be really helpful.
In the chat, we have a couple of questions from Ellie. So the first one is, do your videos reflect what you are learning at the moment for the most part?
So sometimes they do, like all my sculpting videos, which I don't really call those tutorials, but when I put those out, I was still learning how to sculpt, and I still am. I'm still learning how to do everything, but I was still learning how to sculpt, and I was considering myself a beginner in those videos. So those definitely, a lot of the things are a lot of my videos and my tutorials are things that I've done for a little while already and been comfortable with. Yeah, but occasionally. So I would say for the most part, no. My videos don't reflect what I'm learning at the moment, but some definitely do.
Yeah, I find that it's quite the same when I make my content as well. And oftentimes,
Yeah,
I think that you're probably finding this as well, that when you're actually making videos explaining new concepts you've learned to other people, it kind of helps solidify it in your mind as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I had the
And
same question. Like,
Mhm.
is it like whenever you learn something, do you make videos for yourselves so that you can go back and watch it later? Like, did you do any videos like that in your channel where you thought, okay, maybe I can go back and watch this one exclusively?
Um, Let me see. I have to actually check some videos. I think most of them no. Like, I don't usually make
Mhm.
videos for myself. I
Mhm.
do definitely learn things while making videos because if I'm trying to be thorough about explaining something,
Yeah,
occasionally I'll realize that, like, oh, there are some extra options here that I haven't messed around with or things
yeah,
like that. And
yeah.
I should, if I'm actually trying to explain them to people, um,
Mhm.
I want to be able to be thorough and explain like each aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I definitely learn things making videos, but I don't think I have any videos that I check back to see like how I made them. They're usually
Mhm.
a lot of the a lot of the videos I've made have been things that I know how to do pretty well, and I've done them a lot just from making little loops and stuff like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Ellie had a follow-up question as well, which is, how do you plan out your videos? Do you write a script or an outline of some kind? Or do you just wing it?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I usually come up with the concept first, which is like the easy part. And then I just try to settle on like the scope, I guess, like how thorough I really want to be, because sometimes that can get out of hand if I'm just like, oh, and you can do this and then you can do that, and it just like never ends.
Yeah.
So figuring out like scope is nice. I don't script my videos, but I do usually script intros and outros. And usually in a few of my recent videos, I started doing summaries for like longer videos or complex videos. And I think that is kind of a form of scripting, and that it's like very loose, but I am kind of telling people what order I'm doing the steps in, and then it's also for myself that I know what to do next. So that can be kind of helpful. But usually what I do is I come up with like a basic idea, figure out the scope, and then just go into Blender and start kind of acting like I'm recording, but I don't record, and I just kind of go through. And if I run into any problems, then I like kind of make note of it and try to settle that before actually recording. So usually by the time I start recording, I've already set up the scene a few times and gone through the process, and that can be kind of helpful.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you ever reach a point when you're doing that where you think, oh, I wish I would have started recording a little bit earlier because I feel like I had it all kind of laid out right there and then?
Sometimes, but I think mostly because I'll just kind of like whisper to myself. It wouldn't really make sense to be recording. Yeah, I don't know. I still find it kind of hard to talk to myself as if I'm like having a conversation to another person. So usually when I am doing like the dry run, I'm just like, yeah, okay, then I'll put it over here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and it's like if I've actually kind of had that problem recording some videos before, and my where I'm trying to like model something live, I'll listen back to it and I'm like, I can't understand what I'm saying. I'm so mumbly and whispering and stuff.
Ah, right. Okay. That's interesting. So let me just check the chat again. Monban says, I wonder if Joey has any thoughts about whether it would be more profitable to teach more industry standard softwares like Maya or 3ds, and why he chooses to be in the Blender space. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Would it be more profitable? I don't know. I honestly don't. I pretty much just chose Blender because it was the software that I was using. I've only used Maya like a few times, and it was like 10 years ago when I was in school. And I basically just learned it well enough to model a kitchen, and then I dropped it forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I wanted to be more profitable, I think making courses would probably be the way to go. And I think in that case, it probably doesn't matter too much whether it's Blender or Maya. I mean, I'm not really sure. I don't think I would be necessarily qualified to be teaching Maya courses. I mean, especially now because I don't know it. But a lot of people who use Maya, I think, are more like industry professionals, and I don't consider myself to be a person who is an industry professional.
So, like, speaking about courses, is that something you've actually considered, making paid courses?
I've considered it. I don't think I'm like ready for something like that. I just don't have any solid ideas, basically. Maybe in the future, though.
Yeah. Would you be worried about, I suppose, like a time investment and not really knowing whether or not anyone would actually be interested in the end? Because I know when I talk to other people, that's kind of like the number one concern for doing course type content. Like, a lot of people want to try it, but there's always just that little bit of fear that settles in before actually doing it.
Yeah, like if people don't buy it, then you put all the time in for no reason, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly haven't thought about it too much. I know if I do want to do a course, I think I should kind of go all out and make sure that it has like, some proper like examples and example files, probably some form of documentation or outline, and then also captions, I think, are important if I'm trying to be more thorough about something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
I suppose would it give you more confidence in the idea of doing a course if you knew that, you know, there'd be other members of the community that would help to share it for you? Because there's
I
like,
think so. Yeah,
'cause
definitely.
there's a very strong affiliate culture in this community where, you know, if
That's
someone
true.
makes a piece of content, other people want to share it. So, you know,
Yeah.
maybe if you did ever consider it a bit more, that would be something that would give you a bit of confidence.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. Just being able to like being confident in outreach and advertising, and knowing that people, even if it's not a large crowd, that people will sign up and buy it. Because I
Yeah.
think a thing about YouTube that I like, even though I don't have sponsors or anything like that, so I don't really get paid for my videos. There's like, it's really low risk. People can just watch it for free and stop halfway through and not complain that I took their money. So,
Yes.
but with a course where people have to pay for it, I think a lot of people will not watch it because they don't want to pay. And if somebody does pay to watch it, they're, I want them to make sure they feel like they get their money's worth. So I'd want to be careful with crafting it, and also careful with how the distribution worked, I guess.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I suppose when distributing paid content, there's like a whole host of new anxieties that come along. As you say, like free content, it's very low risk when it comes to the disappointment factor. But do you find yourself quite anxious when releasing regular videos? Like, do you ever hang over the publish button and just kind of leave it there for a little while? Or are you very much the kind of person that just like wants to move on?
I honestly, some of my videos, I think I've heard CG Matter talk about this in some BlenderNest episodes, but with some of my videos, will edit them and then not watch them, like to check for mistakes, and just upload them. Just like, yeah. So I like that's pretty common. I think I'm like careful enough with editing that even though I don't watch it like beginning to end when I'm done, I have already watched it like multiple times over, just in like really small chunks.
Yeah,
I feel like confident enough, and like if somebody will probably point out like glaring things in comments, and I'll take it down or whatever. But that's never happened. So no, I think I don't really get nervous about publishing because of the webcomic that I worked on. And like from the beginning, like I was telling myself, like I'm gonna make a bad webcomic, and people are gonna read it and they're gonna say it's bad. And so I got like really used to telling myself like it's okay. Like I made it in like an hour. And the point is that I'm like putting it out there, because another thing that it was hard for me at the time before that was just showing people my work. So that it was also kind of a form of like, I want to finish projects, and I want to have people see my work and just get used to people seeing my work. So I think I've had enough practice with that I'm not really as nervous about it anymore.
Yeah, so that's a very solid idea. You can kind of set your expectations appropriately just to kind of help yourself get more content out there.
It's definitely not an approach for everybody. I know some people start YouTube channels and they start them with like really like high production value, and they look good from the get-go, and they're just really thought out. And I am just not that type of person. I usually start off like, I'm going to start and I'm going to show people, and it's going to be bad, and that's normal. And it's just part of the catalog now.
Yeah, that's fair. Ellie says, thanks for this. It's very helpful for trying out new techniques for making their own videos. That's nice.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Light says, question to Joey. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Especially because my life has been very winding. Just as I explained at the beginning, just like hopping around from one thing to another. I keep trying things and kind of changing my mind and adjusting my path. So based on what I'm doing now, I would say in 5 years, I would like to be able to just be doing freelance, like a combination of things like freelance, YouTube, probably set up a Patreon, money from Gumroad, and hopefully animating my own like animated shorts or like start a series or something like that. And probably move to a house that has a yard because I'm living in a condo right now. Other than that, I have no high expectations, and I'm kind of just, you know, trying to learn more and feel better than yesterday, basically.
That's a good goal. Living in the present.
Solid goals
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I do plan things. Like I'm a cautious person. So I don't take like huge risks usually. So, but yeah, I'm always just trying to move forward and kind of judging things as they come.
Yeah, that's very sensible. You mentioned freelance, is that
Right.
something that you have always enjoyed doing, or if you're thinking about the long term, like 5 to 10 years, is it something that you think you'd rather leave behind? Or
It is something that I don't usually. It's when people talk about burnout, that's the thing that burns me out the most.
Yeah.
Is doing freelance. Even if it's something that I like, I've gotten so used to working on short projects, which is kind of problematic also. Just that I like to start a project and finish it in a few days and then be done with it. And so when I'm working on something for over the course of a few months, I get really hesitant and just kind of like, oh, I'm coming back to the same thing over and over again, even if like in the case of that music video, like it was a fun music video to make and it had a lot of different elements to it that were different, but just like sticking with a certain theme for a long time, I get really tired. So it is something that ideally I don't want to be doing it forever, or just be really careful about which projects that I pick up. So yeah, that's not really like a long-term thing that I want to do, I guess.
Yeah, all of that it's quite interesting because it sounds very familiar to the way that I've kind of described picking projects as well in the past.
Right.
And I almost want to call it the YouTuber brain as well, because like talking about risk versus reward for spending time on stuff as well. It's like, sometimes you don't want to spend an extreme amount of time on a project, not only just for your own interest, but because it just seems like a bit of a silly idea. Sometimes, like if you need to publish it out to an audience, you think, well, the amount of time spent on that project, could I have done like maybe 4 or 5 more interesting things that would have garnered, more attention in the end? Who knows?
Right.
Because, every individual project you do is another roll of the dice, like pushing it out to the world.
That's true. I think it really depends. Like my outlook on this is that like I'm not relying on YouTube and Gumroad and things like that for all of my money, which is kind of nice. Like because I do have another job and I can work on this on the side. It's just supplementary.
Yeah.
And so I think if that wasn't the case, like if I had to make all my money with this, I'd probably be doing a lot more freelance, and I would be thinking about things and just a more like money centric kind of way.
Yes.
And yeah, so it really depends on your situation, I think. So like, if I had like a ton of kids and I just really needed money, I'd probably be working a lot more on freelance and probably also have a second job.
Yeah, that is true. I have heard from other creators in this community who do have kids, and they tend to pick their projects in a bit of a different way to what other creators do. Just generally, I've seen that creators that have very few responsibilities tend to be a bit more scatterbrained with their ideas.
Right.
But creators who have kids, I know at least a couple in particular, they specifically look for what's very popular, what's trendy, like, you know, more kind of safe ideas they can kind of, you know, maybe harvest a bit of attention from, which I suppose makes sense because when you have responsibilities, it's like, you know, you need to be a bit more careful with what you pick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's tricky. So it's a whole different way of navigating the industry and jobs that are available.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from the outside looking in, because I don't have kids at the moment. But like Curtis said, you know, hearing the way that some of the creators that do go about picking and choosing really makes you think of, and not just that, but just the way that some of the creators who don't have, you know, specific concerns, whether those be like financial or housing stuff, are able to excel and focus in some ways. It's not any better or worse, it's just different. So it's good to identify like what category you fall in and try to make the best of that.
Yeah, I think being analyzing your situation well enough to know like what you can and can't do comfortably, and understanding like risks before you thrust yourself into a situation that's hard to get out of can be important and save you trouble depending on what you're trying to do and where you are.
And this kind of line of mixed media, mixed internet, mixed algorithm work is so full of anxieties because of rising and falling numbers. And I feel like it is very much like an exercise in mental health a lot of the time as well. So with that in mind, have you ever like reached a point where you thought, oh, I don't know if I can carry on with this, like in terms of the YouTube channel and stuff? Or has it all been very much a bit of a slow, calm burn?
With the YouTube channel, I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with it at this point. I feel like the hardest thing about it, honestly, is coming up with ideas regularly. And I don't have a rigid schedule right now. I've just been trying to make a video once every week or so for a little while. And I have definitely had plenty of past projects before I started Blender where I just was working really hard on a thing and just, you know, in the matter of like a week or so, was just like done with it. And I think that just because I have hopped around to a lot of things, trying things here and there, I've kind of got my finger on the pulse, on my own pulse, in a sense, about like, I guess just like the more things I try, the more I understand like if I want to keep going with something.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So like the webcomic, I eventually stopped that. I was just like getting too stressed trying to think up jokes and things that had like punchlines and stuff, and it was just not really I was just like putting out a lot of bad comics that I didn't really want to do, but I was like, I'm running out of time, because I was trying to stick to a very strict schedule for that. And so I eventually just did a slow down and then drop it. But with YouTube so far, it's like working out fine. And I've been enjoying it. So I do plan on like doing this for a while. But yeah, it's definitely like, you know, a word of advice for like anybody. Just try, like, if you're working on like a long-term project and things like this, just occasionally ask yourself if you like it and how you feel, and if you want to keep going with it. And I'm not saying you should just like drop everything and just quit everything, but I think sometimes people will continue doing things they don't like for a long time before realizing it. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a great word of advice. So take that to heart. It's true. It's really important to take a step back every now and then and go, does this still align with the things that I like or want to be doing?
I will add in here as well, because if for you, Joey, and if there's anyone else interested in doing YouTube, it's very like easy to look at the Blender YouTube space and think, you know, it's so saturated now. I don't know if there's like any viability here for turning it into a job, or, you know, anything like that. And I can tell you that it is possible. It is very possible, when you can do it. Like, the demand is there. the more people that are on YouTube, especially, the more viewership that everyone in this kind of creator space gets overall, because the algorithm is designed in a way that's very encouraging for like building audiences for everyone.
Right.
So yeah,
And
go ahead.
I think a thing to keep in mind with that line of thinking is that everybody has a different way of explaining things, and there's always room for another example or explanation and a new voice. And also, people aren't dividing up viewership, really. A lot of people who are watching your channel will also watch somebody else's channel. And so you're like sharing views. You're not fighting over them.
Yeah, very true. People also kind of learn about the different personality types. So I think sometimes there's like a big trend going on. They want to see the content from all the different people and kind of, get all the perspectives. I remember I was in a video call the other day with a couple of Blender creators, and I said it's a bit like how when there's gaming news, like new news about video games and stuff, people tend to subscribe and watch videos from like, 4 or 5 different YouTubers about the same piece of news or something. And I feel like there's something similar that happens in the Blender community here. So like the more content, the better.
Agreed.
All right, let's check the chat.
Yes, and we are reaching the hour mark as well. So
Monban.
Be mindful, be mindful of people's time. And if you want to join the stage and ask Joey a question, if you want to throw in the chat, definitely feel free to do so. I'm going to link Joey's socials here. Joey kindly provided us with a link tree, which is a really quick and easy way to get in contact or check in on Joey's progress. I definitely recommend that you do that if you've enjoyed it so far. I'll also take the opportunity to thank everybody who might be listening that may have participated in the BlenderNest birthday contest, and also give you all a little bit of a hint and peek at the challenges channel, which will be up by week's end, meaning like by Sunday, with a brand new challenge. And some really exciting things coming down the pipeline in terms of contests and collaborations with the Blender community and add-ons specifically.
Ooh, very interesting.
Cool.
I have a follow-up, a final question for you, Joey.
Okay.
What exactly is your avatar? To me, it looks like maybe a stylized kalimba in a forest of bamboo.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one. That's funny.
Yes.
Yeah, so it is pretty like ambiguous. It's actually based on like a little drawing that I made when I was making buttons. So it was already the circular format. And it was like a kind of really cartoony skull with 3 teeth. With just some like slime in the background, and I made it digital I think like a year ago. But I think the skull, like when you blow it up, looks kind of squid-like also, which makes it kind of confusing to look at, but there was something about the shapes that I really liked. So yeah.
I really like it. There's a lot of room for imaginative improv. Visual improv.
I'd have a larger version somewhere. I'll share it if I can find it.
Yeah, please do. That would be great. Also, I just wanted to say that I really enjoy your videos. I'm trying to get more into character work, and they've been a pleasure to watch so far. And your attitude in the space is really nice, like kind of a calm approach to making content. Like thinking before putting things out, and that's sort of a nice change of pace in a space that feels like it's constantly moving. So I really appreciate that, and thanks for chatting with us today.
Thank you. That's really nice.
If you enjoyed this conversation and this format, please consider giving the video a like, as it will help us grow the channel and the community. If you want to stay in tune and in touch with what we share, also consider subscribing if you haven't already, and turning on the notifications so that you can be the first to know when these videos drop. Thanks for tuning in, and see you in the next one.